Welcome back to the Questions About Life podcast. I'm Brian Fleming.
And I'm Daniel Broome.
And we do this podcast because we like to ask questions about life and found that just in casual conversation, we would be asking and talking about some pretty deep questions about life that neither of us really got to talk about with other people because we just kind of think on the same deeper wavelength. And so we thought, hey, let's start a podcast, share that with people, and maybe it'll help other people who have thoughts or questions and they don't know where to go or who to talk to, or maybe they're afraid of being vilified because they're asking questions about something. And so, yeah, we started this podcast just to discuss random questions about life, existence, everything else, from one end of the spectrum to the other, if there even is an end on either end, which I don't know if there is.
Who does know? Yeah, but we have fun talking about it, and it's not to say that we're enlightened or know any more about some of these topics than anybody else does. It's just that we enjoy going down rabbit holes and seeing if we can get closer to the truth.
Yeah, life's interesting. The more you learn, the weirder it gets. And I've learned there's people you can't talk to or try to tell about what you've learned because it bumps up against, I think, a lot of the boundaries they have in their operating system in their minds, and kind of what would it mean if we explored beyond that and we found out there was more? What could that dislodge or disprove, or the fear of the unknown? And so I've always been an exploratory person. You know, I'm well aware of what I believe and why, but I'm also very well aware that I don't know a lot of things. And the more I learn, it doesn't really come to a point at the top like I used to think, like an upside down V. It's more like the more I learn, it's like a V shape where it goes up and out, kind of like a hand grenade explodes up and out, you know, and it just goes more and more and more, and it's pretty much, it seems, never ending.
Yeah, that's true. Like the more we learn, the more we learn about what's out there, and you know, those all have their own little branches of rabbit holes to go down. But I think it was our last episode or one of our previous episodes. You can go back and we talk about that quite a bit. About certain questions are kind of taboo to ask. Like you're not supposed to ask those questions. And that's what this podcast is about. Is there aren't any questions that you aren't supposed to ask. You can ask anything, and it doesn't mean that there's some predetermined answer to it or anything like that. It's just that if I ask, a question about the existence of God in church, or if I ask a question about the safety of the COVID vaccine on an FDA website or something, it doesn't mean I'm anti-vax or I'm an atheist. It just means that I've got a question. Yeah. And so that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. And that makes you wonder, where's the conditioning happening on people where why would someone be offended or upset by somebody just asking a question? Like, they were somehow taught that, whether directly or subtly, to oppose anybody who starts asking these kinds of questions.
Yeah. And
even has legitimate arguments or questions about it that even as they're getting answers given to them, they're going, okay, that makes sense, but also that's within this way of thinking, but there's also this way of thinking. And, the average... I find that the average person who, you ask questions about, and they have a certain worldview that they're sort of set in stone in. I'm very cautious of people who are set in stone with their worldview. It's kind of like drawing a circle in the sand and standing in the middle and saying, "This is all there is. I'm not leaving. Don't fuck with me." Like that's scary. I'm not doing it. It's like, okay, they might be good people. We just can't talk to them.
Well, I feel like a lot of that resistance to being able to ask certain questions is rooted in fear. Anybody that's just dug in and drawn that circle that you described, they're afraid that if we have a discussion about it, that perhaps their illusions or their beliefs might evolve or change, and then there's a lot of ramifications to that. Maybe my community is affected. I can't have the same friends or the same activities or the same everything that I've built my life around. And so Brian and I have talked about this quite a bit on previous podcasts. I encourage you to go back and look at those. That we try to stay open. We try to stay open-minded. We of course have our own beliefs. Some of them are similar to each other. Some of them are different. But we try. We do our. We're human. We have egos, but we do our best to try to stay fluid and examine new evidence and consider that new evidence, whatever the topic is. Continue having discussions about them, and if those lead us to a different belief or something that we're confident about, we're open to that. We feel like that's something that'll help us grow as people.
I mean, if I'm climbing a mountain in Colorado and I'm taking a certain path and then I'm going up that, things I encounter along the way or getting to the top of that mountain, or the fact that I encounter things I didn't anticipate along the way, I don't think that's to be feared. I mean, I'm more curious than anything.
Yeah.
You know, I was taught to be afraid by religion growing up. I'm more curious now than anything. I'm not afraid. I've never been less afraid of dying, and I've never believed and perceived God in a much bigger way than I was ever taught to. And it's just, I don't know, I'm just at a point where I mean, I'm not afraid anymore of that stuff. I'm just more curious to know. And I don't believe that curiosity is a crime. And if it is criminalized, you gotta say, okay, who's trying to control people here? Because people violently oppose things they're afraid of.
Yeah.
And they criminalize things that they're afraid of. And yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious as hell about everything.
Yeah. Well, you've had you had a recent experience with medically supervised psychedelics that helped sort of open your mind to things. You were open-minded before that too. We were friends before you did that. And,
I was open-minded but very reserved. And after the psychedelic assisted therapy, it was medically administered, very safe setting. I saw. I don't want to sound too weird spiritual, but I saw beyond the veil that is sort of cloaked over our minds. And that's you don't have to believe me. You can take it or leave it. But I saw beyond what I was taught is the only way there is and what there's supposed to be. And the only way it is existence in a way that I didn't know existence existed beyond our current level of understanding.
Yeah.
Where the hell I actually went in those experiences, I don't know. But it completely changed the way I see the world forever, because it's like only being in this room your whole life. But then you go out the door and there's the entryway, there's the kitchen. Mm. You go out front, there's a whole world outside. There's a car in the driveway, few cars in the driveway, and there's like trees. But all we ever knew was this room. Mm-hmm. And so now I come back to this room, and everyone's been in this room, and I'm trying to tell them, like, you have no idea what's like right on the other side of the wall. They're going, what? They're going, what wall? Like, it's like Neo in the Matrix. He gets outside the Matrix. If you were to try to come back in the Matrix and explain to people, you're in the Matrix. I think we've said this before. They all think he's nuts. Like, what is this guy talking about? It's like, until they experience it, like, they kind of don't know. I remember telling my wife, who went through the same program, I sent her down there for, getting off the pain meds from her car accident, as well as, she got healed from childhood sexual trauma in about 8 hours on the Ibogaine. And she dealt 34 years with that. And I told her after I got back, before she left, I said, we're going to sit at this table next week when you get back. I said, I know you don't understand what I'm saying right now, but when you get back, we're going to sit at this table and drink coffee, and you're going to look me in the eye, and you're going to say, Brian, I get it now. Yeah. And she did.
Well, Brian did it the right way. You went to a program that administers these, I was going to call them, I guess they are drugs, but they're also, they could also be considered medicine.
Well, they're all nature. They're natural medicine. It was a university study.
Yeah. So you did it the right way. The way I was, all of my psychedelic experiences stem from just being a rebellious kid, like the same way people start smoking weed when they're a teenager or whatever. You're at a party or there's a friend who's like, hey, you want to do this these mushrooms, I got some acid or whatever. And so I've had a lot of experiences like that. And that is as use as if you're using it as medicine, that is not the right way to go about it. And they're not party drugs, they're
way different.
Yeah, I mean, you could still have a good time at a party on them, but it's not ideal. But yeah, and so that's actually a good segue into what our question is today, which is, what is consciousness, right?
What is consciousness?
What is consciousness?
That is the question today.
Yeah, and that I thought of that because when you were talking about this room and how if this is all you ever thought existed, and then you do some ibogaine or you do some DMT or ayahuasca, mushroom, all the different psychedelics, and they introduce you to the room that's over there or the whole world that's out there. The reason I thought about it is because you were describing it in a way that those things exist. And anybody that's listening that might have never done psychedelics before might go, no, that doesn't exist. That was just part of your trip, right?
Well, what do you mean by exist?
Exactly. That's where I was going.
Okay.
That brings up the question, and it's related to consciousness, is like, what is real and what is not real? And if anybody out there that's not tried psychedelics and doesn't understand the concept of like the fact that we believe what we've seen in these experiences, a lot of it is real, or there are at least hints into what else is out there. Well, examine your sober brain. Examine the brain, the way you're thinking when you're not under the influence of anything. How do you know that that's real? The only way that you know that it's real is because of your five senses are receiving stimulus. Your brain is, trying to make sense of it, organizing it, and going, okay, this is a table, this is a microphone, that's coffee. That's the only evidence that it's real, is because you perceive that it's real. So if you're in one,
well, you've been told this is the real one, but what if where psychedelics take you? What if that's the real one and this is the fake one?
Yeah, and then
just an alternate one, and there's several alternate ones, and this is the only one we know.
Yeah. Well, who told you that it was a real one? Somebody in this.
Yeah.
In this thing, but I only
in this realm
saw them and heard them. So that's my point. Is like when you're if you're under the influence of psychedelics or anything really, you're seeing, you're hearing, you're receiving all the same stimulus as you did as the person in this sober mind that said it was real. So. But yeah, that's a great segue for what is consciousness.
Yeah, well, you're receiving all that same stimuli that we are here, but you're also receiving more. And, like, things come to you, and you don't really know where they come from. Like, thoughts and answers and things that you weren't anticipating or you weren't trying to think about. But on certain experiences like this, you might not realize you're searching for an answer to something you really struggle with and deal with. But on these types of substances, they show it to you. Mm-hmm. And you didn't even know you were looking. And then suddenly when you come out of it, a lot of times you sort of don't deal as much with that issue anymore.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I know I talk about it a lot, and I actually want to have you interview my wife on this podcast about her experience.
You want me to?
I want you to, because I know the whole story, and I think you'd be a great interviewer. But she, like I said a few minutes ago, she had childhood sexual trauma from the age of 4, and for 34 years, like, she just saw life through this trauma filter.
That's crazy.
She was afraid of everything. A guy would look at her, like, checking her out, and she'd just get pissed off and like, what the fuck are you looking at? Yeah. Like, thinking like he's gonna try to rape me. It's like you're walking through Kroger and it's 2 PM. Like, yeah. And there's like 200 people here. Like, you're safe in the crowd, But it was every little thing. And then she had the ibogaine, and 8 hours later she's like, just good. And she has a before and after picture that is fucking mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
She took a selfie right before she took it, and then afterwards, someone took her picture. I don't know if it's a selfie or not, but she took her picture. Every person we show that picture to, whether they know what the situation was or not, they go, "Oh my God, your eyes, like your eye, like they're so big and clear, like you can see freedom in those eyes, even if you don't know what the situation was." Sure. You go, that's her, but that's not the same her. Like those were taken about 12 hours apart.
Yeah,
and yeah,
that's the biggest thing. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions I think about psychedelics in general. I mean, there are other drug types that are also healing, but a lot of people don't realize that they're not party drugs. It's medicine, and what they can do is heal. I think you and I have talked about this. There's a
massive healing potential.
Yeah, there's in quickly too. I think you said it in a
relatively
way.
quickly and lasting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, when I first saw you when you came back from San Diego, it was you said I just had 15 years of therapy. I just completed 15 years of therapy in a couple hours. But the thing I was going to bring up is we've talked about this. Yeah. There's a series on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind.
I've watched every single one of those.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen,
and they're fucking true. Like, yeah. I've had some of those.
I've only watched the first 2 episodes. First one's about LSD. That one's okay, but and you may have a different opinion because you've seen them all. But I'm recommending episode 2 to just about anybody I know. Yeah, it's about psilocybin,
mushrooms,
and it goes into. I mean, they have a bunch of case studies of people that have been healed by it, whether it be through sexual trauma, other types of trauma, cancer patients that are facing imminent death, and the anxiety that comes with that. And
existential, they call it existential angst or something, like the fear of dying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like the guy in that episode, one of the main features, and if I hadn't had experience on this myself, I might think, yeah, that story's bullshit. Mm-hmm. But this guy had dealt with OCD his whole life, and he was like 30 or something by now. He had a wife and a kid, and he had one psilocybin therapy session. One. It lasted, a handful of hours, 5 or 6 hours. He no longer medically qualifies for an OCD diagnosis.
Yeah.
After one session.
He had it bad, too.
He had it bad, too.
Very negative. It was...
He wanted to kill himself.
His life. Yeah. He had it real bad. And they were interviewing him, and you could see the excitement and the relief and all the burden that had been taken off of him when he was like, I'm fine now.
He no longer qualifies for that medical diagnosis. And there's another guy, he was an Army veteran. I forget his name, but he actually testified before Congress for this kind of treatment. And I remember him saying after his treatment, he said, I remember the first day in 15 years I didn't want to kill myself.
That's crazy.
Damn. And the guy's doing well from what I understand. But it's like people have no idea. We've been conditioned and trained to think those are bad, pharmaceuticals are good. Now, I'm thankful for pharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. But if you think that big political industry is like the moral right way to heal yourself, what fucking planet are you living on? And what do you not use your brain? Yeah. No offense, but why would such a cash-driven, money-driven, politically driven industry be the only right and moral way to heal ourselves when mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, they grow right out of the ground in our neighborhoods?
They touch on that in at least in that episode. They go, why would the pharmaceutical industries? Because a lot of these experiences are one dose and you're good, right? Or maybe it's one dose every 5 or 10 years.
And there is integration after an experience. It's not one and done always, but it can take away 70-80% of an issue you're dealing with. And then you integrate the lessons, like with a trained counselor who understands this stuff, and you can integrate that in your life. So there is integration, but there is relatively fast healing with this kind of stuff.
Right. So
depending on who you are.
Yeah. The point is it's not like a daily pill or anything like that. So it's so much less profitable, and and it grows out of the ground.
And a lot of it is not patentable. It can't be patented, and So they're like the pharmaceutical companies. Like,
They don't
what
want
are we
anything
going to do
to
with that?
it. Yeah, we are a for-profit company.
Yeah, we're making money.
Yeah, why would we give somebody something that they need every 5 or 6 years, or maybe once a lifetime, and they can grow it in their closet at home for, and buy all the stuff, all the equipment off of Amazon for $30?
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna make any money doing that. So yeah, that's why.
Well, cures don't make money. Treatments do. Treatments make money. If you cure something, now no one has a need to spend money on your solution for it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And they don't need your other drugs either. All the other drugs you're peddling, we don't need it. Cause
a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if you can't make money off something because it comes out of the ground or it's not patentable, you can't really control it. The second best thing to do is to demonize it and monopolize it corporately and politically so that people are afraid to get it because they're afraid of getting in trouble. Mm-hmm. And then, well, hey, you can't do that, but hey, here's our solution, our alternative, and now you're back into making money.
Here's some Prozac.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, here's hydrocodone. This won't hook you in about 5 days and
be
a painful withdrawal for a week or two or more.
Yeah. No, for sure. Now, along the lines of what is consciousness, you
also, we got to get back to that.
No, I think we're on it. I think we're on
it. Okay.
Because you were talking about your psychedelic experience. I mean, essentially, what is a psychedelic experience? It's an alteration of your consciousness, right? So, you were talking about your psychedelic experience, and you mentioned something about, things come to you, things happen. These revelations come to you.
Yeah.
And that brings up the question, or at least the topic of psychedelics or not, where do thoughts come from? And now there are some theories, like it's just sort of intuitive, and we all sort of assume that, thoughts originate in the brain. We've got this brain, and then we come up with thoughts. But there are alternative, and I don't. By the way, I don't have an opinion one way or another, but on this, I know what I hope it is, but I don't claim to know what it is.
What do you hope it is?
Well, let me lay out what they are. There are other theories that the brain is not the source of thoughts. The brain is basically a receiver. It's like a radio antenna, and there's maybe a consciousness out there, or a field of thoughts, a field of ideas, and our brains receive them. And you talk to like a writer or anybody that's creative, sometimes they'll say, they've got a hit song or something, and they'll go, I don't know, it just came to me.
Yeah.
Like one day I just was like, oh, let me try that.
That happens.
And it comes to you, and then how does that happen? Maybe it's from your subconscious, and that's why you're not aware of it, and then your brain sort of acknowledges the thought, or maybe there's a field of thoughts.
Well, I'm extreme creative, exactly what you just said. As an author, a speaker, a communicator, I'm an extreme creative, and what I've found is I put in the effort I have to try to think of something. Mm-hmm. But I know when I'm grinding away at my thoughts, I'm probably not going to find the thing I'm looking for while I'm grinding away on the thoughts. But later on, 2 hours, 12 hours, 48 hours, 2 weeks later, when I'm taking a shower or riding my motorcycle or doing something, driving down the road, not trying to think of the thing, it just drops on me and it goes, that's it. And I don't know why. I had to crawl through all these like, mud lanes under barbed wire, under machine gun fire, like in the military. You had to go through all that stuff that wasn't essential, but it was. All that wasn't the answer. You had to go through all that stuff to get to that one piece that you were actually looking for. But you don't control when it comes to you.
Yeah.
Or how.
Or how many times has this happened to you? This happened to me in the kitchen when we were brewing this coffee just now. Remember, I was trying to think of a word?
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that word? What is that word? Well, as soon as I stopped trying to figure out what that word was, boom, it came to me. And that happens to me all the time, where I'm trying to remember something.
You were like, oh, diversity, or what's that word?
Yeah, where it doesn't matter like what you're trying to remember. You're just trying to remember something, and you're like, man, I can't believe. And the harder you try, the more you get frustrated. Like, I can't freaking remember. And then as soon as you go, whatever, it doesn't matter. 10 seconds go by and go, oh, I remember what that was.
It was
How does that happen?
the word was adversity. You're like, you're
Yeah,
thinking
earlier in the
diversity.
kitchen was,
And you said, oh, the word was adversity.
Yeah.
But so what does that say about our conscious experience when we're trying to accomplish something and we're trying to control it as a means to get there? And it requires effort and stress, which, some things do. But when we just can't make something work, there's like a spiritual, universal principle that, we've heard, and probably from all parts of the world. Basically, when you stop trying to control something, that's when it tends to work. But it's the fact that you're willing to give up control that unlocks that thing. And as long as you try to jiggle the handle, like the door won't open because you're just so damn determined to make it, to force it, like square peg, round hole, sledgehammer. And then finally, if you just go, all right, it's going to happen how it's going to happen. Then you go to walk away and it's like, you hear the door creak. It's like, that thing opened.
Yeah, as soon as you stop trying.
There's a weirdness in existence where that's true.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's true in all cases. Not that you shouldn't work for a living or anything stupid like that, but that principle, I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in other people's lives. There's something about it, and we don't entirely understand it, but it's there.
Yeah. And would you consider that, I haven't thought about it enough, but would you consider that being evidence of thoughts not originating from our brain, consciousness not originating from our brain, and our brain simply being, the radio antenna or
that
the
receives
receiver.
Transmissions and downloads it, translates it.
Is that evidence of that? I'm not saying do you believe that that's the case, but is that evidence in favor of that?
I believe it could be. I know there are a lot of things that we obviously don't understand that are totally true in existence. It's just beyond our current level of understanding or ability to understand. But I would say things definitely exist beyond our understanding. That's definitely one of them. Like, why does it work that way? Who knows? Like, maybe in 500 years we'll know.
Maybe.
I mean, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just beyond our current level of understanding.
Yeah. It is weird. But, it's like another piece of evidence of thoughts not originating from the brain is, you look at history. And, of course, when we study history, it's kind of like you got to consider who wrote the history, right? But, and what agenda did they have? But there are everybody knows about the pyramids in Giza and Egypt, and it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, and nobody can figure out how they were built. And but there are pyramids from that time all over the world, and they all have very similar architectural designs and stuff. There's some in Mexico, which was
like the Aztecs,
built by the Aztecs and the Mayans,
the Incans, Peru.
Some in Africa. Some of the real wild conspiracy theories are that a lot of these mountains are old pyramids that they're just not in the shape of a pyramid. I don't know if I buy into that, but
like actual mountains, like terrain features, like an actual mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just like a mountain. Yeah. It's like, oh, those were pyramids at one time. That's pretty out there, but
yeah,
I'm getting kind of off the rails here. But why was everybody around the world building pyramids when presumably, they weren't communicating with each other? And so
why pyramids?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Like why that shape
pyramids,
or why that?
What? Yeah, exactly. And I got a theory about that too. But
okay.
But also, is that evidence of information or ideas or thoughts? How did they all have the same idea and thought at the same time?
Like it's all deeply embedded within our being, maybe at a deeper level we don't understand, but you could have the people in Mexico thousands of years ago and people in Africa thousands of years ago, and something about how we're all wired the same as humans. We were doing similar things because that part of the operating system, no matter how different we are, is still in all of us because it's a part of all of us, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like our way of thinking maybe went in certain directions.
Yeah, during that time, because we're not building a bunch of pyramids today.
Not unless it's a casino.
Yeah. Now here's an argument. Here's the counter argument to that,
Okay.
and I think that this is also possibly true. I've always thought this about the pyramids. Like since I was a kid, is like, why are those still there? How have they lasted so long? Well, it's possible that from that time period there were hundreds of thousands of just as impressive of structures, but it's only the pyramids that survived because of the strength of the structure, because of the way it's built. It was able to, the shape of it was able to withstand, and also the region that it's in, it hasn't had a bunch of extreme weather and all that,
or had a J dam dropped on it.
But all the other thousands or hundreds of thousands of structures that were perhaps even more impressive weren't able to stand up to the elements because they weren't in the shape of a pyramid. Possible.
Well, the thing about a pyramid, it has a very solid foundation. It's wide, it's strong, it's solid. Everything built on top of it, it goes to a point where it's like less and less and less and less and less.
Yeah.
Even though all
very sturdy.
Yeah, even though all those things combined that are on top of the foundation, obviously combined could maybe be weighing more than the foundation, but yeah.
True. Very sturdy. Well, but also, yeah, that's true. It could. So everything's weighing more than the foundation,
depending on how tall the pyramid is. Yeah.
But that weight gets distributed in a smaller and smaller area of that foundation the higher.
Yeah, like mathematically, physics, if you're doing the calculations and the measurements of if you're an architect and you're building a building, you have to factor in all those weights and angles and how they're distributing and how strong they are. All that stuff that I would never ever. That's not how I think.
Yeah. And then the question, my natural next question about that is like, okay, so the pyramid's really strong and it's going to last for thousands of years. Is that why they built the pyramid? Did they know that back then, or did they just by accident? Did they build thousands of structures and those are the only ones that survived? It was by chance.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's part of their consciousness. We need to do this for some reason.
Yeah.
I was walking around the lake the other night with my wife. We walk around the lake in the evenings as the sun's setting here in our neighborhood. And we were talking about consciousness. It was just this. And I said, this whole thing is so fucking weird. I told her. Consciousness. Like, what we see, what we hear right now, this whole experience we're having right now. Yeah. I'm seeing you, you're seeing me, I'm feeling the temperature in this room, you're hearing me, I'm talking, we're understanding each other, there's motion with my hands right now, there's colors, there's lights, there's all this going on, just craziness, all this big ball of energy all over, and it's even in the air that we can't see, and it's like everything is in this giant energy field, just constantly being done and producing, and parts of it are dying and then being reborn, and this has apparently been happening forever. Apparently there was no beginning, or there was, but there wasn't, depending on who you ask, and it's all just being done, constantly of every moment of every moment. Mm-hmm. To me, that's what consciousness is. And it's what a weird ass thing. How did this even? It's all just so weird. Yeah. Cool, but weird.
And it's interesting. I don't disagree. I agree with you. But it's also interesting that we consider it to be weird because typically
compelling.
If we have an opinion about something like that, it's weird. We're comparing it to something else, right? We're going. If we're in a field of flowers and they're all yellow except for there's a pink one, we're gonna go, oh, that's weird because it's a pink one in a field of yellows. But as related to consciousness, like you said, I agree. Also, it's very weird. But I also don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah,
I've never experienced anything other than consciousness.
Yeah. Well, and when I say weird, I think that's a good point. Comparison. I think what I'm comparing is. But the understanding I've always had, and then realizing how big and insanely complex everything is on a level I never used to.
That's true.
And like, I think that's what I meant by weird, because I'm going, there came a point where I understood and saw things as way bigger in a way that I never had the ability to understand and see before. And so I think that was my comparison. That was a good point you made.
Yeah.
Because I'm comparing my previous understanding of consciousness that was very limited to now what I understand in a way that's so deep I don't even know how to like explain it in words.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be walking down the street or doing anything, just have these thoughts that it's like, man, that's 10 levels deep existentially. Where the hell did that come from? And I couldn't even explain what that was to somebody. They'd be like, what are you talking about? And I don't know how to communicate what I just thought, but I get it.
Sure.
And maybe I'm crazy, huh? Well, or what is crazy?
Yeah. Well, you made a good point. I mean, maybe we do have something to compare it to, because, if we're only looking at it on the surface level, our experience on the surface level, it's like, oh, that's just how it is. It's the way I've always known it. And then we are kind of comparing it to something else when we try to think deeper about it. We're basically comparing the deeper thinking on it to the surface level, and that's when you start to go deep. That's when it starts to get weird.
Yeah, weird in the sense that this is way more different than I ever imagined it could possibly be. Like Alice in Wonderland, she falls down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
boy, there's some different things than up on the surface.
Yeah,
perfect analogy.
Related to consciousness, there's this other thought I was having, and I didn't. This isn't my original thought. Duncan Trussell, you follow Duncan Trussell? He introduced me to this idea, but I took 50 milligrams of THC the other night and was in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and I was laying there with my thoughts, and I started thinking about this idea that, I don't know if Duncan Trussell came up with it, but he's who introduced me to it, is when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to wake up as Daniel Broome. I'm going to wake up with all these memories of my 43, 44 years of experience. I got all these memories. I got these relationships. I'm going to wake up in this life. And how do I know that that's who I was yesterday? What if I woke up as John Smith yesterday, and I had all of John Smith's memories, experiences, relationships, and everything else? Because the thing that has convinced me that it's possible, I don't think it's likely, but the thing that has convinced me that it's possible is the idea, the weirdness of the fact that we need to sleep.
Okay.
What is sleep? We go to sleep and we're unconscious for a certain period of time. To me, that's weird. It's like, it kind of makes sense. Okay, the brain needs rest.
Why do we need that to re-energize?
Yeah, machines need rest.
Yeah.
My wife was already sleeping next to me, and I was thinking about, oh, she's asleep. She's unconscious. She's not. Maybe she's thinking. Maybe she isn't. Maybe she's dreaming. I don't know. But that's weird that we need to sleep, and then, can I wake up? And is it an illusion? All these, I remember falling off my bike when I was 5, like I'm Joe Biden or something. And
true story.
Did that really happen, or is that part of the program of waking up as Daniel Broome on this particular day?
Yeah. You reminded me of an interesting quote. I don't remember who it's by. I think it was someone like Mark Twain. He basically said something to the effect of, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago."
Yeah.
You're under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Meaning, like, you can make a change. You can
change your mind.
You can change your mind. People don't think you can, but you can. I've always had this really strong curiosity about people who are labeled insane and crazy. Like, they have all these different personalities or something, or they're just so out there in their thinking, people think they're nuts. What if we're nuts? What if they're the ones who are like, dude, I literally decided to be a person who doesn't live according to the past trauma. Mm-hmm. I've literally just chosen to believe that things are different and good, and I'm just going to live as if it is, even if I'm wrong, and who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And suddenly this person's just doing these things and going around and like, wow, they're so healed. And you're like, they just kind of changed their mind. They're just kind of like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm not going to live in this miserable state anymore. Yeah. I'm just going to, and if I get hit by a train while doing it, well, at least I was happy when I got hit by the train, rather than living another 60 years as this miserable fuck, you know?
Yep.
But it's like it's almost like having this alternate identity of yourself, which I say alternate, but is it really? If you create an identity for yourself and you actually live into that, you're not being someone else. You're not being an authentic. You're being what you choose to be. Mm-hmm. And if you choose to live into that and live as if that's true every day, you'll start, you know, you start to become that. And you know, I'm not a neuroscientist, but there are neural pathways that get formed through repetition in our minds that I'm pretty sure you could probably transform yourself over time, because we do that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that person's not crazy. You'd have been crazy for staying in that miserable state and not changing your mind and saying, you know what, I'm not that old Brian Fleming anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I have this other alias, this alter ego. But is it an alter ego? No, it's just another side of you that you're choosing to live into, rather than staying in this identity that you've always been in.
Sure.
And, you know, I think when your discomfort level exceeds your fear of that change, you just go, fuck it. And you just, I mean, I've done that in my own life in little ways.
Yeah. You can decide to, be anything or anyone.
Yeah.
Or how about the people that have like a traumatic brain injury or a bad car accident or something, and then naturally their personality is completely different. And that could be an indication of...
That happens all the time.
I mean, you could probably explain that scientifically with, there's this pathway in the brain that has been damaged, and so it had to reroute, and that's why this person's more aggressive now, or, these things have changed. But also, if the brain's an antenna and not the source of thoughts, perhaps the antenna has been damaged, and now it's equipped to receive messages in a different way. And so it's interpreting the messages different. Like a schizophrenic or something might have or an autistic person or something might have an advanced ability to pick up on certain things. Mm-hmm. But, like a common thing with autistic people is they're not very, I think empathy is the word. They're not
like low in empathy.
Yeah, they're not good at social cues. They don't really understand
just kind of say what they're thinking, and you go, "Wow, that was kind of harsh," but they don't seem to give a shit. Not because they're not good people, but that part of them maybe is lower, where the filter and the thought to be more empathetic in the way you say this maybe wasn't there.
Right, or maybe you're giving me body language cues. Like this happens when anybody's talking on the phone all the time. Like there's certain tones of voice and stuff, or paces of your where you're like, "Oh, we're wrapping this call up." I was like, "Oh, okay, man. Well, cool. All right, that's awesome." And if most people pick up on it and they go, "Oh, we're ending the call right now." Yeah. I don't have to say we're ending the call. I'm just like, "Oh, it's implying sounds good. Okay,
we gotta go."
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Bye. And nobody said they had to go. But an autistic person might not pick up on that. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Brian's just talking a little bit faster now. That's kind of strange. But anyway, let's get on to a next topic.
Yeah.
I didn't get stuck on my phone.
Well, even with what you said about the antenna being damaged, maybe person's in a car accident and now they're different. Maybe their brain is receiving things different. I would say, well, was the quote unquote antenna damaged or just modified? Because we could look at it. Damage is more negative.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, they're not the same as they used to be. They're damaged. It's like, well, that's a negative connotation. But
I just moved our camera, didn't I?
A little bit.
I think I put it back.
Yeah, I think it's good. But yeah,
that's what this section of the room looks like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
No, but it's like, what's our perception of that modification in their mind? Is their brain damaged, or has it been modified where now they're seeing things and acting in ways and living in a way that they didn't understand or know before, and we just don't understand, so we see it as a negative. I mean...
Yeah, is it really a negative? That's a good point.
Is it?
Is there even such thing as good and bad? do we just perceive things as good and bad?
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms.
I think we talked about that, I think, in maybe episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's a hotly debated topic for obvious reasons with spirituality, religion, free will, all that stuff. And yeah, that seems to be a rabbit hole that never ends too. And there's a lot of good arguments on all sides of it. I've heard so much on all sides of it. Very compelling thoughts either way. That's beyond me. But speaking of thoughts, are we responsible for the thoughts we think? I mean, if we act on those thoughts, I think we're more responsible. Then again, that's a free will thing, and that's debatable depending on who you ask. But are we responsible for the thoughts we think? Because I've had thoughts that were just fucking terrible thoughts.
Yeah.
I didn't act on them, but man, if people could read my mind sometimes.
Yeah, I'm a freaking weirdo, man.
Like they'd never talk to me. They'd be like, "Stay the hell away from that guy." If we're being truthful, I think that's every single one of us. Anyone who says, "Oh, I don't have thoughts like that," where I'd be like, "Dude, you're lying." Like we're human. Yeah. And I don't know why we do, but are we responsible for those?
That's a good question. I think that I agree with you that I can't speak for everybody, but I definitely have a bunch of weird and terrible thoughts, and that I would never, express or act on. So at a certain level, I think we're all going through that, and then, but it's our job to, we're trying to be as authentic as possible, but we're also, through our behavior and our speech and everything else, our outward actions, when we're being observed by other people, we don't let those out. We don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
And so the answer to the question, are we responsible for our thoughts? My opinion on it, without putting more than this 30 seconds of thought in it, is no, we're not. But we are responsible for what we do about those thoughts,
or do with them, or
we have
act
control
on them.
over them. Like we can go, oh, that's a fucked up thought. Like this is how the process can go. It's like, oh shit, that's a fucked up thought. What am I gonna do about that? Okay.
Or I've been trained to think that's a fucked up thought.
Yeah.
Maybe that should happen. I've just been trained to think that's bad and it shouldn't.
Well, let's say that it's like one that is definitely fucked up.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it's like, so we're not responsible I don't think that we're responsible for having the fucked up thought, but I do think that as soon as the thought comes, we have a responsibility, and we have sort of a process that we use once we're presented with the thought. For example, the first step in the process could be, is this thought good or bad? And and then you go, oh, okay, well, I just recognize it's a fucked up thought. So so then you decide what to do with it. You decide, am I going to continue thinking about this? Am I going to tell somebody about it? Am I going to act on it? Am I going to, whatever, like
bury it, forget about it, move on?
Yeah. And if it's a good thought, like I get, maybe I get thoughts like, hey, Daniel, wouldn't it be cool if I could feed 100 hungry people? And then you go down the path of evaluation. Well, what does that look like? Is that a good idea? Should I do that? How should I do that? Should I tell somebody?
Yeah. What's it going to cost? Am I funding it, or are we going to crowdfund it? Or who's going to help?
Yeah. But the question itself leads me to believe the question itself reminds me that we have thoughts that we don't ask for. We have thoughts that we don't.
And we didn't
it's not
think
something I would have chosen.
We didn't think something with the intent to think that thought. It just appeared.
Yeah. And where does that come from?
Yeah. And here's my question about that. Are we responsible for parts of ourselves that we did not create? Such as thoughts that would be considered disturbing or bad. Are we responsible for parts of ourselves that we don't create or control? Here's a more practical example. This is a hot button issue, has been for a long time. There are people who they don't know why they're homosexual. They just say the best bet they can come up with is, I was born this way. I was born with this preference. I don't know why. And it's to them, it's as natural as, I don't know why cookies and cream is my favorite ice cream. It just is.
Yeah.
I don't know why my favorite place in the world is the beach. It just is. And it's like, well, some of them, because I have friends who are that way. I'm not, but they are, and I still love those people, obviously, and I don't understand them because I'm not that way. But are they responsible for having that sexual preference if they didn't create themselves with that preference, wherever it comes from or however it evolves or develops? I mean, who knows? Naturally, are they responsible for having that in them? Because, I mean,
not literally in them, but
yeah. Oh man, yeah, I didn't mean that. But like, no, it was good. It was good. Because like where I come from, my background, like one of the really, really far right wing conservative arguments is there's no gay gene in your DNA that like says, oh, this person is going to be homosexual or that person won't be. And it's almost like, well, is there a gene that says you prefer cookies and cream over mint chocolate chip?
Yeah.
It's like, how does the person know? And I mean, this is a hot button topic because, like, at least where I come from, it's like, well, the idea is we're all naturally bad because we exist and we're totally fucked for it. But I always say, like, if there's a new Ford Mustang that came out and it had issues, so there were recalls, do you just take all those Mustangs and scrap them in the junkyard and destroy them? Because it's the Mustang's fault it had this problem or this issue or this thing, it was this certain way that was perceived as a defect. Would you blame the Mustangs, the cars? Well, no, you would look at Ford Motor Company up in Detroit and go, oh, the creator of these cars, the manufacturer, it was a fault in their thinking that created this problem. So who would be on the hook, the car or the manufacturer? Yeah. It would be the manufacturer. And so when I think of issues, like moral issues, things like this, like, homosexuality, for example, it's like where I come from, those people are said to be on the hook for the way they are. But I've met so many of them now, and they're just like, I don't know why I'm this way. I just like it. It's just how I am. Like, and how could I say, well, I know why mint chocolate chip is my favorite. Because like I had something to do with that in my operating system, in my taste buds. Yeah. I have some responsibility for that because I had some input, some hand in creating myself that way or making that a preference for me. I know it's an overly simplified example. I don't mean any disrespect on either side, but it goes back to that whole, are we responsible for parts of ourselves that we did not create or maybe we don't control?
Yeah.
I mean, plus when it comes to, say, sex, that is such a deep, diverse, wild, almost incomprehensible topic for what people like. People are into all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
And they don't know why. They're like, man, that just really gets me excited. And it could be something totally different than you or me. And we're like, we don't know why that is for them, but if I'm being truthful, I don't know why that thing gets my attention either, this other thing, and none of us really do. Yeah. So it's like, are we responsible for parts of ourselves we don't control or we didn't create?
Well, yeah, that's the old nature and nurture topic, right? So like on the issue of homosexuality, I'm also not gay, and I've even gone so far as to like look inwardly throughout my life at different periods of time, maybe 5 or 6 times in my life. And I'll think to myself, I go, okay, homosexuality is real. There are people that are homosexual. Am I homosexual? And I'll think about it. Am I just saying that I'm not homosexual because people will look down on me? So I'll really stop and think about it. Go, is that attractive to me? Does that get me? And it doesn't, right? But for some people it does.
Yeah.
And to your point, are they responsible for that? Is it a product of their experiences? Is it a product of their DNA? What have you? I don't know. But I think even in that particular topic is just like, I think that why does it matter? It's like if somebody wants to live their life that way, who am I to say that they should or they shouldn't? As long as they're not encroaching on the way that I want to live my life, as long as they're not coming and saying, you can't be attracted to women, who am I to say that they can't be attracted to
imagine
a man
if it was
can't be
flipped.
attracted to a man, or a woman can't be attracted to a woman?
What if it was flipped?
Yeah.
Where it's like you're vilified because you and I are vilified because we like women.
Yeah, I mean,
And we're,
why?
and we're outcast.
And I'm not hurting anybody.
But what would cause in that flipped scenario? What would cause people to do that? It would be a thought. It would be probably a belief system or thought process that being straight, heterosexual, according to their thought system, belief system, is somehow wrong because it's not their way. It's a different way to their way.
Well, even if
something.
let's say even if, and I don't feel this way, but even if I did think like, oh, homosexuality is wrong, that's bad, they shouldn't be doing that. Even if that was my opinion, who am I to tell somebody else what they can and cannot do? That's not my business. And the only time it becomes my business is if they are somehow encroaching on my freedom.
Or harming you or harming another person.
Yeah.
Or like you're hurting these people. Like,
yeah,
if
they're out raping little boys and stuff, then we got a problem. But if you
you leave that to the straight Catholic priest, apparently. So.
Right, and that's a problem. So, but if you're just somebody that isn't hurting anybody, you're having consensual sex with somebody of the same sex, behind closed doors, conducting your own business, that has nothing to do with me. And the only time that
I don't even want to know about that. Like, not only is it not my business, I don't even want to know. Like, even when there's like the gay pride stuff, I'm like, dude, I don't care who you fuck. Yeah. Like, you don't have to go on TV and tell me, like, no offense to you, but it's like, I don't get out there going, hey, I'm straight. I'm married to Jamie. She's hot and she's a female. Like, I don't do. I understand the other side and reasons because they have been marginalized and everything. So I know that's the reason. So if you're homosexual, listen to this. I'm not saying that against you. I understand.
Yeah. But, the argument for that, though, if we're talking about freedom, is like, you don't give a fuck. You don't care that you don't even want to watch them getting on TV about it. Well,
it doesn't affect me. Like, why are you putting that in my face?
Well,
but the same could be said for, like conservative Christians putting their religion in their face. Exactly. It's like, why are you putting that in my face? It can go all ways.
Well, so they have the freedom to go on TV and talk about it. You have the freedom to change the channel.
Yes.
It goes the other way too. Like we as heterosexual people should not tell somebody else what they can and cannot say on TV. Go ahead and say whatever the fuck you want on TV. I have the choice to watch it or not watch it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, some people don't see it that way though. On both sides, they don't because they don't want to take that personal agency and responsibility because it would take away a big part of the argument they're standing on if they took that personal responsibility. Yeah. Well, and think about this: like, there's so many belief systems and religions that teach love that are against homosexuals. I understand I understand these arguments. I went to Bible college. I get it. But think about this, just from like a really pragmatic look, like a very practical kind of thing. If there's two people of the same gender, two guys or two ladies, they actually love each other. They enjoy each other. Like you said, they're consensual.
They enhance each other's lives.
They enhance each other's lives. They're good humans for each other. In the same way that if they were just friends, they enhance each other's lives. If these people genuinely love each other, and many of them do, then I come in and say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, who's causing...
No more love.
Yeah. But, Well, who's causing the hate and the pain and the strife now? Is it these two people who happen to be the same gender who actually love each other? Or is it this asshole who comes in and says, hey, I see you really actually care about each other and love each other, but you're fucking wrong. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And they're going, what'd we do to you? Like, We're not even hurting you. We're not disagreeing with you. Like, we care about each other. We love each other. Mm-hmm. Now, and that usually comes from a religious undertone, which professes to preach love. But now it's like, that's the divisive thing in the equation.
Yeah, that's the only problem.
Yeah,
is that a heterosexual has a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like...
and my question is like, why? Why?
Well, I can tell you why.
Some people, why?
Well, I can tell you from the conservative American Christian view is that, in the Bible it speaks against homosexuality.
Okay, so the Bible says...
So that's what it's based on, yeah.
The Bible says homosexuality is a sin.
In a couple different ways, yeah. In different stories, different verses. It speaks only against it.
Let me ask
for the
you
large part,
because I'm not.
So that's what it's based on.
Yeah, well, I'm not near as familiar with the Bible as you are. So the Bible says homosexuality is a sin. Does the Bible say that people are responsible for preventing other people from sinning? Right. So, like, said another way, it's like, if I'm reading the Bible and I'm investing my life and my philosophy and everything, the way that I live my life based on this text, and I read homosexuality is a sin, so I can take that and go, oh, don't be homosexual. I should not be homosexual. God says I should not be homosexual
because it's a sin.
Yeah, right. But my question is, does God also say, if you find anybody that's sinning, go and stop them?
Yes and no. Here's what I mean. It does talk about, in certain parts, if there are people within the church who are living in sin, so basically hold your brothers accountable, call them to repentance, turning away from that sin, and sinning no more. As far as us being responsible for how other people live and their choices, no.
Yeah, because only God can judge, right?
Yeah, well, and what's interesting, though, is, like, Jesus, in large part, he came and he loved people, showed them ultimate love and acceptance. He did, in many ways tell people, to turn away from the things they were doing that were sinful. But there are certain Bible stories where Jesus would go into a town and he would preach. And maybe, let's say the majority of people did not accept the message. Mm-hmm. Do you know what he did?
I don't know.
He left. He left and he went to another town and he preached his message all over again.
Gotcha.
He basically, you get to the edge of town, the proverbial dust off your feet, shake all that off you, go to the next one. And people did what they wanted. We do what we want. Like, ultimately, like, you can tell me not to do something. If I want to do it, I'm going to fucking do it. And, you might not know about it.
Yeah.
If you ever had a teenager or you've been a teenager, you understand that.
And who am I to stop you if you're not hurting anybody? If you're not, well, and by hurt, I mean also encroaching on their freedoms.
Well, the thing is, if somebody's living and spreading, if someone's perceived to be living and spreading a sinful lifestyle, sinful as defined by my belief system, not necessarily someone else's, I am doing good by trying to suppress that and disallow the spreading of sinful lifestyles, according to my definition of what is sinful. If you're an American Christian, that would be based on the Bible.
Yeah.
So now you can go in other parts of the world and they justify it the same way. Like, in the Middle East, they'll cut your head off, they'll drag you through the streets, they'll throw you off a building if you're homosexual, because their religion speaks against that so strongly that it's punishable by death. And so they see that as a holy thing. They frame it as a holy thing by keeping sin at bay. Well, part of the problem is different religions can define sin as a different thing. There are many similarities, but you could create your own thing and say, well, I believe these 5 things are bad, and if I see people doing them, I'm doing the right thing and the holy thing by suppressing them, even to the point of killing them, to make sure their ideas don't affect my kids in my community. So therefore, I'm doing a good thing. Yeah. When in reality, it's like you just shot 5 people who were different than you.
Yeah, which is worse, killing somebody or having sex with the opposite sex or whatever.
That's totally consensual and none of my business. And and here's the thing too. Like in Christianity, it's like the message is marketed as love, but it's like, but if, like I said, if you're jumping in between people who they actually love each other, and you're telling them, hey, you know, they're gonna go to hell, this and that. Okay. But it's like, if that's true and they choose to go there, do you think hating them and being mean to them and opposing them, do you think that's going to be very convincing for them to turn from their way of thinking and believing to yours?
Yeah.
That's almost a sure bet way not to do it. And then
showing that, displaying that hate and stuff, you're basically showing them, because essentially you're saying, you shouldn't be the way you are, you should be like me.
Yeah, and I have no idea why I am how I am.
And then you turn around.
How do I change what I am?
Right. So you're saying, don't be like you, be like me. And then at the same time, you're being hateful. So you're saying,
while preaching
I want
love.
you to be very hateful and very cruel, because I want you to be like me, and I'm hateful and cruel towards you because... You know, whatever. Yeah. So that happens in politics too. It's not just religion. It happens in politics. So you know.
And there's all kinds of justifications that are used in religion and politics for justifying these things. But what a lot of times it comes down to is, well, you believe this belief system is right and these standards, and someone else believes another one is. Well, now you got a fucking problem.
Yeah.
Because, well, we don't see it your way. Well, we don't see it your way. Well, I guess we're going to have to kill each other until somebody wins. And then we'll say, okay, whoever wins, it's like, that's the way it is, and we're going to tout this for centuries. This is the only right way.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, that whole history is written by those who have hanged heroes. It's like, well, whoever won kind of wrote the history and the lessons and the way you're, quote unquote, supposed to live.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the part I've never understood. It's like, okay, you feel this way, I feel this way. You know, I don't get the idea that we should kill each other over it. I mean, there's so many other alternatives. It's like, okay, well, you go ahead and do you, and I'm going to go ahead and do me, and maybe we can still interact with each other, but, you know, you don't get in the way of me having sex with my wife, and I won't get in the way of you having sex with your boyfriend or your girlfriend.
But what happens if someone tried to get between you and your wife? Like, you two can't have sex.
Then
you
got a problem.
Big problem.
Yeah, then there's a problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then it could come down to killing each other.
Because they don't think you should have sex with your wife.
Yeah. But, you know.
Well, based on what? Who are you to say?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who am I hurting? Yeah. So, yeah. But, you know, and that's related to our original question, too, is what is consciousness? This is because when at the root of all of this, and you touched on it in the beginning, is, you know, gay, straight, whatever, trans, whatever, is it your fault that you're gay? Is it your fault that you're straight? Where in your consciousness is that originating from?
Yeah, that you're responsible for, like you did that.
Yeah. No, so the trans issue, for example, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a more touchy one to me. I think there's more to it.
I think it's just as simple, and I'll explain.
Okay.
Same thing as gay is homosexuality. You want to be trans? Go ahead. You want to dress like a woman? Go ahead. You want your name to be Jennifer instead of Mike? Fuck it, I'll call you Jennifer. I don't care.
Yeah, yeah. If somebody wants to be called something, like, I have no problem calling you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead and be trans. Be a woman. Now, we're going to have a problem if you're a 30-year-old man dressed as a woman and you want to go pee next to my 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
We're going to have a problem.
But he identifies as a 6-year-old girl, so it's just his classmate.
Hey, that's okay. That's fine. You go ahead and be a 6-year-old girl, but...
Not next to my 6-year-old girl.
Now, when you're affecting my life and the people that I love, then we got a problem.
Yes.
So I think it's all rooted in freedom, right? Like, everybody should be free to do whatever the hell they want, as long as they're not hurting anybody and they're not encroaching on anybody else's freedoms. So you're encroaching on my daughter and my family when you want to pee next to her, right? And let me explain that for just a second. There are legitimately people out there that identify as 6-year-old girls, and they may go pee right. I don't have a 6-year-old daughter. I'm just using an example, but they may pee next to my 6-year-old daughter, and
he's 37.
Yeah, and there's no ill intent and whatever. There are trans people out there like that, but there are also heterosexual men that are freaking perverts.
Yeah, they're child predators.
That like 6-year-old girls that go, oh, well, all I got to do is dress up like a woman and then I can go into the room where she takes her pants off. That's why it's a problem.
Well, and there's the fear of we don't know if this person's telling the truth or if they're just a pervert trying to get over on people and using that as a safety, as a shield to go in and do the shit that we're afraid they're going to try to do to people we love.
It's the same thing as a heterosexual male. If I'm a heterosexual male and I go, hey, I'm not a child molester. I'm not interested in 6-year-old girls. I would never rape a 6-year-old girl. Therefore, the men's room's occupied. I'm going into the bathroom with your daughter because I got to pee. Don't worry. I'm not a sexual predator. That may be true.
Well, can I take your word for it?
Yeah, that may be true, but
that's what a real predator would say.
It is with me.
That's what a real predator would say.
But there are also people that will take advantage of that. That's why we don't cross that line.
Well, I think that's the point. There are people who would take advantage of that. I think that's the apex that most people are probably afraid of, unless they're just against people who are totally not like them. But we're all afraid that someone's going to try to, be the Trojan horse and get in there, undercover. And don't look at me. I have safe passage into doing possibly something dangerous or harmful to someone you love.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. Yeah. And I think that's one of the bigger things, roots of the issue, like against trans people. What's interesting? The more in my life I've gone to church. This is nothing against the church. I think this is true probably with every group, politically or religiously. The more in my life I went to church, the fewer friends I had who were outside of church that had differing points of view and beliefs. And when I've gone to church less in my life, and I've gone and hung out with other people who had differing life experiences, points of view, beliefs, I tended to learn more, not be as judgmental. And even if I didn't agree, it's like I saw those people more as human than when I was going to church a lot. And I think in a lot of ways I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I think our psychology gets conditioned and gets familiar with a certain way of thinking that's reinforced by those around us. Because I never had fewer gay friends than when I was very involved in church. Now that I'm not,
it's didn't know they were gay.
Yeah,
they were also at church.
Yeah, or that too, because that's not a place to come out if you want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of gay people at church. I bet you there's just as many as there is anywhere.
Well, they're just not saying anything because they don't want to get crucified and hated,
and lose their community and everything else.
Yeah, but then you have somebody. If that's the case, then those people are hanging out in a crowd that they feel like they're supposed to be around, or it's the only crowd they have, but they can't even really be themselves. Because you can't go into an American church, especially like here in Texas, like a Protestant Texas in church here in Texas, and bring like 50 of your gay friends like every week. Like people would have a fucking shit fit. Like they'd fire the pastor, they'd threaten to leave and bring their money and kids with them. Yeah. That place would become a shell.
Seems like that's counterintuitive, because if the church is all about love and acceptance and helping people get closer to God, 50 people just walked in the door. This is an opportunity. If what you truly believe is that homosexuality is sinful and everything, this is an opportunity to help 50 people.
Oh, I get it. Oh, and if you believe they're on the highway to hell, why would you do anything to dissuade them from being there?
Yeah, that's where
you would want them to come back. But the thing is, people aren't always so focused. They'll say that's their focus. We don't want anyone to go to hell. But what they really don't want is people like them showing up and rocking the boat and bringing in different belief systems or things that could influence their families and children to live differently than they are teaching them to live. So now they see them as competition or adversaries. I mean, there are plenty of people in every group, including churches, where, like, yeah, the face you put on is love, but push comes to shove on certain social issues like that. Well, if it was, why were those people leaving with all their money and taking their kids because, let's say, there are too many gay kids that were showing up at youth group, or too many black kids that were showing up at a white youth group, and the parents who are big givers in the church are saying, I don't want my kids around that many black kids who come from the other side of the tracks because I don't want them to be a bad influence. And you look at it and you go, well, God forbid, maybe if those kids were troubled, just because they come from a bad neighborhood doesn't mean they're trouble. It means they have it probably rougher than you do. But who's to say that your kids couldn't be a good positive influence on their life and help them get out of maybe that bad place they come from so that their kids don't have to grow up in that. Yeah. But people, church or not, it's completely irrelevant. People aren't thinking, they'll say this is what we stand for, the love thing. And there are a lot of people in the church, they are like that. They do live what they fucking preach. And I know a lot of them, so I'm not vilifying the whole church, but there are also just as many who will say, we stand for this, but the minute something happens and you got to live what you preach, it's like, oh, well, that can't be true, like you're saying, because, well, if that was true, then why are you acting this way? Yeah. I mean, there's a local church right here in town that when the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened, it was the biggest issue. I have a lot of respect for the pastor. He did this. He brought in some black friends of his who were pastors in different areas of Dallas to talk about racial reconciliation. Now, they said it was going to be a Q&A. It was very one-sided in favor of, let's say, the black community, because there are issues on both sides. But the BLM thing was really like how everything's been against blacks, and there's a lot of truth to a lot of that. There's a flip side to that as well, but the interesting thing is they didn't talk about that, and they ran out of time conveniently. But my point is, him just bringing his black pastor friends in from other churches to just talk on this little. People were threatening to leave the church. Josh, what are you doing? Man, you shouldn't be doing this. But he thought it was right. He felt it was right. And they're still doing fine. They're still growing. Yeah. But there were people who are like very against it. And you go, well, why would you be against just talking about getting along better with our neighbors? Jesus said to love your neighbor as you love Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. It's the greatest commandment.
Didn't Jesus make black people also?
He made them too.
So why would you hate one of Jesus's creations?
That I know. And I mean, my life story. I grew up where I never knew a black person who wasn't a criminal until I was like 15.
Yeah.
And that wasn't me being racist. That was me surviving, because that was my only interaction with anybody of that color. Now, I have lots of black friends now, and obviously I know that's not true. But yeah, he made them too. But I think it's cultural differences and things that we've learned that get in the way of that, of what we say we live for. Like in that case, love people because Jesus loves them. It feels good to say, but when you got to do it, it's not always that easy.
Yeah. Well, it happened at Martha's Vineyard. Did you see that? Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor.
I didn't see what happened.
Okay, so Ron DeSantis, Governor Abbott has been busing migrants from the Mexican border that have crossed into the United States to sanctuary cities.
Well, they want them, right?
Yeah.
They're like, hey, we're open to my immigrants, so they're shipping them there.
Yeah, they are designated sanctuary cities, and so Abbott and
so he's giving them what they want.
Yeah, Abbott,
so to speak.
Yeah, Abbott and DeSantis has been going, hey, we don't have the resources for this. We're going to take you to a sanctuary city where they're going to welcome you with open arms and stuff. Boy. And of course, the government of the sanctuary cities are not happy about it. But one of the biggest ones happened, I think, last week.
Okay.
Ron DeSantis brought 48 immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, which is a very affluent.
Extremely. It's where the ex-presidents live or go to vacation.
And vacation and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And one woman there Well, I'll skip ahead and then I'll get into the weeds real quick. But they were only at Martha's Vineyard for like 36 hours before Martha's Vineyard took them somewhere else, right? But there's a whole bunch of commentary that we could do on that. But the one that stuck out to me, one of the most, was so some of the HOA or the neighborhood
association,
the neighborhood like group chat or whatever.
Oh, the leaked. Moms of Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, the drama.
It got leaked, and one of the people said, "What was he thinking by bringing them here and bringing them to one of the most expensive places to live ever? Why is he bringing poor people?" Some of the poorest people to one of the most expensive places to live.
Oh, I see where that's going.
Right? It's like, what was lost on her was, yeah, bitch, this is one of the most expensive places to live.
America.
You got a ton of money. They don't. So fucking give them some.
Help them.
Right?
Well, that's how you vote. So fucking give your money. Yeah, you want everyone else to give their money to help them. Yeah.
On top of that, I didn't know you hadn't heard of this. On top of that, Martha's Vineyard is more of a vacation area.
Yeah.
So in the off season, which we're coming up on, something like 80% or 60%, a majority of the housing there, is vacant, right?
Oh, so, because it's vacation homes. Yeah.
Yeah. During this time of year, there are lots of vacant homes. So fucking, if you guys are a sanctuary city, put them in there. They're homeless.
Yeah.
Why can't they stay with you?
Yeah.
But no, 36 hours later, they were gone. So
now those same people, I would assume, and I'm assuming, are the same people who said, "Open the damn borders."
Yeah, there's no problem at the border.
Yeah. Well, they'll bring them into your country, and we support that. Just don't bring them to our fucking city. Like, keep them in Arizona, Arizona and Texas, because they're the political opponents of those sanctuary cities anyway. Yeah. But then when you did what they said, but you put it on them, then suddenly they're going, "Whoa, wait a minute!" It's like, well, this is what you wanted.
2 million. There's been 2 million encounters of illegal crossings at the border this year so far. We've already broken an annual record, and we're only like halfway through September.
Yeah,
2 million. The border states have been dealing with, and Martha's Vineyard couldn't handle 48 of them.
48. Literally 48. Yeah. Not 2 million, not 4,800.
Yeah, New York's gotten, they've been getting, they've gotten maybe a couple thousand, and they've declared an emergency. They asking for federal assistance. All of this stuff.
What is this doing for anybody?
It's 2,000 people in New York in the state of emergency, but Texas is dealing with 2 million. Don't worry, they're fine.
They got enough vacant land out in West Texas to set up tent cities. Well, here's my thing. I've never understood. Maybe I'm just too much of a simpleton. Probably not. But every country I've ever been to in the world has borders. And you can't just fucking cross those. There's a reason there are borders. Where does this stupid fucking idea come from that, hey, we should open our borders and just let everybody in? Mm-hmm. Like, no civilization has ever done that in history. Yeah, what are that I'm aware of. What the fuck are city walls for back in the day?
Why do we even have countries?
Yeah, why do we have countries? Why do we like who actually thinks you should just open borders? Like, do these people know? Did they ever take a basic economics course? Mm-hmm. Like, do they know anything about how civilizations work or cities work or municipalities? Do you know anything about economics and budgets and supply and demand and overpopulation and like what kind of idiots think that's just a thing? Like, people say, "Oh, America's terrible. They want to build walls at the border." Hell yeah, we do. And every other country doesn't want people flooding in either. That's why you have to have a fucking passport.
America is out there.
Like, whose stupid idea was this?
Yeah,
when was this ever an issue?
Right. Well, America's out there defending other countries' borders right now.
Yeah.
We're funding walls on other countries' borders.
I patrolled the Afghan-Pakistan border.
Yeah.
We even got blown up on the way back.
Sponsored by the U.S.
Yeah.
Weren't letting people cross.
Yeah, do I give a shit about that border? No.
Yeah.
But I was in the military, so I had to.
Yeah, and of course the counter-argument, we're being pretty tough on immigration, but of course the counter-argument to it is that there are people in their equal to us. It doesn't matter where they were born, what their nationality is or anything. We're all human beings. There are people out there that are in need. They're desperate. They're coming from a desperate position.
That's most of the world.
Else. Yeah. And do we have some sort of responsibility to be humans about it and help them? Yeah, we could have that discussion.
There has to be an extent, though.
Yeah, but the United States government is responsible for what happens in the United States. We're not responsible for what happens in Venezuela. Venezuela has decided to be communist and run their economy into the ground and everything else. The United States government, regardless of who the president is, has well, we could argue that they do have some control, but in theory, they have zero control over the way. They've chosen communism. We've chosen our way of running things, and you guys fucked up. And so that's on you. Take care of your people.
Yeah.
If, Well,
one of the complaints against America around the world of nations and people who don't like us is like, stay out of people's fucking backyards.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, stay the fuck out of ours if you're coming up from Mexico and not coming in legally. Because I have friends who are Mexican or from Central America. They did it the legal way, and they're just as pissed. Because it took them years. It took money. And then these other people just get to come in. And it's easier to do it the wrong way than the right way.
Yeah, my wife didn't live here until she was like 16 or something. And she went to a lot of trouble, a lot of...
It's a process.
It was a big process to get herself here, and then once she got here, she wasn't home free. She had to, work 2 jobs while going to school full time.
Don't get a speeding ticket.
Paying international tuition, which is usually 3 times the amount. Didn't take out, maybe just $20,000 worth of student loans, which are paid off now. She was working 2 full-time jobs, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and going to school full time. And she's here,
making it work, making it happen. Yeah.
It would, in contrast, is like, somebody that's just like, I don't know, walk across the border, get a court date, and then go hide. That's not the way you do things. So
yeah.
Oh man, how long have we been recording?
Probably an hour and 10, hour 15, maybe.
Yeah.
So consciousness. What a big ball of fuckery this is. Huh?
We ought to do another episode because we talked a little bit about consciousness, but then we
rabbit trailed a few times.
Yeah. So if you would like to see more discussion on consciousness than we've done in this episode, leave us a comment. We can certainly do another one.
Yeah, leave us a rating, review.
Yeah, if there's something about consciousness that we didn't touch on, maybe didn't...
Probably a lot we didn't touch on.
There's a lot, because, we started going down rabbit holes. But, if there's something that maybe we hadn't considered in relation to migration or immigration or consciousness or anything else, or if you'd like to see another episode about consciousness where maybe we'll try to stay on topic a little better, let us know.
Probably do a little more homework and have maybe more of an outline.
Yeah.
With something that deep.
We decided on this. We didn't get any questions written in this week, so we decided to just, 5 minutes before we turn the camera on.
Drinking coffee.
Let's do consciousness.
Drinking coffee.
Yeah. But hey, if you've been watching us for any amount of time, you know that's kind of the way that this works. We start with the foundation, and sometimes we go down rabbit holes, and that's part of our charm. So.
We're just recording the conversations we're having anyway. That's how this whole thing started. Yeah. So if that's not your cup of tea, it's like, well, that's kind of how we do it. We just decided to record it and share it with you. But also, make sure you email us at questionsoboutlifepodcast@gmail.com. questionsoboutlifepodcast@gmail.com. If you have questions that you would like us to discuss on this podcast. And we know that everything we say, there's going to be opposing opinions. Maybe some things me or Daniel said today may have pissed you off. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. And we understand there's more than one way to look at most issues. We just like you, we have our own way of looking at them as well. Doesn't mean we're closed to looking at other sides. But when it comes to survival and things like that, and what's best for everybody, or hopefully best for everybody, we all have opinions. Yeah. But hey,
we try to stay fluid. We try to stay fluid with the opinions. Yeah. And if you've got it,
now close the damn border. I'm pretty strong on that one. Like, we should probably regulate. We should probably protect. We should. But again, there's certainly
be run differently.
Yeah. But there's so much. There's so many politics and narratives around every issue that people get wrapped up in. We don't. I don't know that we always entirely know the entire full story. on many issues that we face anyway.
Yeah, Brian and I are just operating off of our the information that we currently have. If you've got additional information that opposes our opinions, I can't speak for most people, we'd love to hear about them. Help us change our mind.
Or see the picture bigger if we have a blind spot.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, we appreciate you listening this far. Thanks for watching, and till next time.
Yep. Send us an email, questionaboutlifepodcast@gmail.com. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, rate, leave a review, wherever you're listening to this, and interact with us. We will try to answer a question for you.
Thanks, guys.